just after 5 o'clock last night, I decided to sit down, turn on my computer, and watch, at least for a while, the proceedings. I know this is very exciting. The proceedings of the Twin Falls City Council, which are streamed live on the web. And after the last couple of weeks of meetings there, you don't know what to expect. There have been fireworks the last 2 weeks. So I tuned in last night to see if anything similar was going to happen. It seemed, at least in the beginning, calm. And I watched four speakers, one of whom wasn't really there to talk about immigrants or refugees or anything like that, although he made a few allusions to it. Just talked really about the entrance to the city coming in on Route 30, if you're coming in from the direction of Filer, and how it could look prettier and things we could do, etc. All very nice thoughts, and I appreciate the fact that people do take that into consideration and share that with members of council. Council probably does too. And then that fellow sat down. And it was about the fifth, I believe. I'm not, maybe it could be sixth, but about the fifth guy who got up. Walked up to the podium and said, well, I wasn't going to speak today, but I decided that after listening to some of these other people that I had to get a few things off my concave chest. So this guy gets up and, of course, immediately starts talking. And the first thought of my mind was liberal. And at one point in his remarks, he's talking about the sexual assault against the 5-year-old disabled girl here in Twin Falls on June 2nd. At one point in his remarks, what did this guy say? He said, well, the other children who are alleged to have been the attackers are children too, and I think we should let them go, and there shouldn't be any punishment. Man, what is it that these liberals are smoking? Does he have a 5-year-old daughter of his own? Did he ever have a 5-year-old daughter of his own? Do you realize there are people in this community who are lucky, dang lucky, that some parent hasn't already gone over and decided to wring their skulls? I'm telling you right now, when I was a boy growing up, and my dad was a behemoth of a man, about 6.5 feet tall and about 250 pounds of solid muscle. And I saw him one time moving some barbells, and he simply picked up these great big barbells with one arm. And to show off as he was moving them, he was using them like they were dumbbells. When my sister, a wonderful woman that she is, when she was 5 years old, that would have been about 1966. If someone had done something like that to her in our neighborhood, my dad would have gone over to the house, and if a mom and dad said, well, we're not going to paddle our children or get out of our way or slam the door, I do believe my old man would have kicked the door down and somebody would have gotten their bell rung. It could be worse, but I think that if he had just rung their bell a few times, they probably would have wished that he had done something worse to make it over or get it over with. And I'm not recommending anything like that. I'm just telling you that's how people used to settle things in this country. And if you have this view that somehow it's okay for a 5-year-old to be sexually assaulted by a group of other boys and that you should just let bygones be bygones, you are one sick, twisted puppy on your own. And this guy just seems to believe that we should just, let them walk away at this point. I have a few other solutions. I think, number one, the boys should spend the rest of their childhood years in a juvenile detention center staring at four walls. And if mom and pop have a disagreement with that, then they should go out and have to work on a chain gang, 365 straight days, no matter what the weather happens to be. And then after 365 days, ask them, are you going to be good Americans? Because if not, you can leave. And that would settle this for a great many people who are coming to this country. We would let them know we are not going to tolerate these infringements on our culture and on our daughters. 8:11, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story. News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. On our way to 95 today, we're at 70. Ben Stein, who some of you know has a home in Sandpoint. Ben Stein has this piece. Saw it at the Spectator last night as I was getting ready for bed. It's called Ben Stein's Diary. And the title is this: Brexit was sparked by rape and crime. Now, I want you to take a listen to this for a moment. I'm skipping the first paragraph because he's setting this up historically with some references to the Battle of Waterloo and the training of young English soldiers and the like. But paragraph number 2, he says, The Battle of Brexit Britain in Brussels was lost by Europe on the playing fields and in the alleys and immigrant housing of the British town of Rotherham. And then he writes this: there, over a period of 20 years, over 1,000 British girls were assaulted, raped, held captive, gang raped by Muslim immigrants to the UK, especially from Middle Eastern countries and Pakistan. It was a stupendous scandal, apparently duplicated all over Britain on a greater or lesser scale. Did you know this? Has our mainstream media shared this in light of this vote where they keep saying, well, they're just bigots over there in England. 17.5 million of them are bigots and they voted for Brexit. Yes, it's the Brexit bigots who are responsible for Britain's troubles. That's one city, Rotherham, one city. Over 1,000 British girls assaulted, raped, held captive, gang raped by Muslim immigrants to the UK, especially from Middle Eastern countries and Pakistan. And then he writes, it has also been duplicated and then some in Sweden in the wake of a decision about 10 years ago that allowed 1.5 million Middle Easterners and Somalis into Sweden. Stockholm's rape rate has gone up by a factor of about 15. Most of it has come from these immigrants and their sons. Not all, but a lot of white and Asian Europeans are sick of it. They don't want any more immigrants. They're done with political correctness. They're sick of taking in refugees and seeing their good deeds go paid with rape. Stein goes on to write that, according to the internet, is what happened on Thursday in the Brexit vote. The tariffs that were in place on Thursday morning, though, are still in place. There will be no serious movement in terms of trade for months, if not years. Even if there is a breakup of the whole EU, which could happen, each country in it would still need to import coal or hides or rubber or software or whatever they import today. There would be no stoppage of trade. So, in other words, he's pointing the finger directly at the fact that these Muslim immigrants are unable as a whole, maybe not all. I have a friend, he keeps saying, oh, my doctor is a really good person. Well, your doctor wasn't an illiterate. I read on Christian Post the other day where a missionary who visited some of the refugees who are still in camps in Syria and other parts of the Middle East says most of these people can't read or write. The only world they know is what their imams tell them. And their imams tell them that you are secondary, that you are dogs, that your daughters are dogs, and that it's okay to do these things. So a doctor who's got a good education and comes out of a wealthy family in Pakistan, you're right. That's not a dangerous person. But it could well be that the overwhelming numbers of the people who are coming here as part of these resettlement programs are exactly that, ultimately dangerous. Why do we want to take the risk? Maybe it's only 100. Maybe it's only 1,000. Maybe it's only 10,000. Could be 100,000. But why are we taking the risk? And I'm sure that's a question that does not get answered. There were members of that council last night bemoaning the fact apparently some of them have had death threats because of all of this. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But did you know that there was a 5-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted in this community? She's disabled. Did you know that? You're sitting there saying, oh, we've had our lives threatened. It's all about us. Oh, you don't know how hard it is to be a member of this council. Oh, people are mean to us. Once more, I think what happened to a 5-year-old disabled girl is a far more serious thing than some kook on the internet sending you a threatening email from halfway around the country who doesn't even know where Twin Falls is and couldn't find his way here. But the mindset that you are somehow, it is about you and not about the little girl, just blows my mind. It's 8:16. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number to reach our program, 736-0300. Well, it's cheap labor, though, isn't it? By gosh, that's what this is really all about. 736-0300. Also, my email address is bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That's bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Also, candidate for President of the United States. I kept hearing over the last 24 hours that Donald Trump is backing away from his calls for a Muslim ban. He wasn't talking about a ban. as a permanent thing. He was talking about sorting this out, if you recall. But listen to this. Does this sound exactly like he is saying, well, we should change our minds and now we're going to open the gates and let them all in?
Terrorist countries, we are going to be so tough. We're going to either ban or people are going to have a very, very good excuse to come in. Because if we don't do that, we are fools.
Muslim and non-Muslim?
I'd also look at absolutely. I don't want terrorists in our country, John. We don't want it. You don't want it. I don't want it. We're not going to have it.
He's speaking with John Roberts from Fox News Channel. What is so wrong about that approach? Seriously, I mean, what is so wrong about that approach? If you lived next door to a prison which was filled with cutthroats, you wouldn't be having them all over for dinner at a backyard barbecue and let them play with your children all of the time. You would be a little bit more discreet. Why can't we be discreet on the national level when it comes to our own security, when it comes to the safety of our own children? Because we've seen what happened in Europe. And I know the local politicians probably aren't really looking at this and thinking in the long run that, there's not a lot of abstract thinking going on here. Why did this happen in a place like England? Why is it going to happen in it's going to happen in the Netherlands. The Dutch are going to throw out the EU. The Swedes are going to throw out the EU. By the way, the Norwegians, who have done very, very well, have never been a member of the European Union. So, but the fact of the matter is they're sick and tired of all of these quotas and being told they have to take all of these people and they have to deal with it. And that if they don't, oh, you're a bigot. Good golly, folks, it's about protecting the youngest amongst us and the defenseless amongst us. And again, I just get so frustrated when I hear these comments from that dumbass who got up and said last night at that council meeting when he said, well, we shouldn't be punishing these boys for what they've done. You've got to be kidding me. Do you realize if I had done something like that when I was a boy, not only my parents had something they called the board. It was about 3 feet long, about a yard long, and it was a piece of hardwood left over from a hardwood floor someone had put down. And that's what I got whacked on my bottom when I did something wrong. And that would be maybe taking a cookie out of the jar when I wasn't supposed to. If I had done something as abominable as those boys did, my own parents would have made sure that I got the message. And then they would have let the folks come in and haul me away to the detention center and say, we hope that it turns you around because you've embarrassed the family. And we can't have that. You've brought shame upon us. And I would hope that in the families of these boys, there's that feeling as well. I would also hope, because I don't think anyone is going to be as kooky as that liberal was last night at that meeting, that the prosecution will continue when it comes to these boys. We've got more details on this coming up in just a few minutes. It's already 71. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And in about 15 minutes, we'll be joined by Steve Millington. He's the chairman of the Twin Falls County Republican Party. That's on the way here on KLIX. I just have an email in my my email inbox. That's bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And it comes from the folks at the Council on American and Islamic Relations. Somewhere over the last several months, I got added to their daily email list. It's about as close as we're ever going to get to any contact and communication. But the writer does acknowledge that ISIS affiliates have posted photographs of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and Las Vegas, Nevada, asking that their affiliates here in the United States attack those sites. But hey, we're not those kind of people. We'll allow that to happen because it'll make us feel good about ourselves. Because, if we stop this from happening, then we would be bad. And, we're not bad people. Well, we used to be when we were colonialists, but now we're good people. And so we're going to allow them to do it as a way of retribution or repayment or, what do you call it? Reparations. There you go. Before I get to my telephone callers, 736-0300 is the number. I'll get to my callers in just a moment, but just a reminder, our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology, this is now the only locally owned business where they can actually check your hearing here in the Magic Valley. And Dr. Christine Pickup would like you to know that your hearing and brain health are connected. At Mount Harrison Audiology, she's been studying the research on cognitive health and hearing. The most recent findings prove that when hearing loss is addressed with hearing aids, the effects of cognitive decline are greatly diminished. Hearing is critical for communication. for connection to others, and for overall well-being. Now is the time to improve your hearing. You can call Mount Harrison Audiology for an appointment. The number 312-0957. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Hey, good morning, Bill. Well, this is not about cheap labor. This is about globalism and about destroying the culture, bringing us down to third world status. In the 1950s, there was a Reese committee. Norman Dodds was sent out as a special investigator to find out why a lot of the tax-free foundations, other people were supporting the socialist communist causes. And it came back to Roland Gaither. He was at that time the president of the Ford Foundation. He said, well, we're under directive to so alter life in this country that we can basically become a third world nation and then comfortably merge with the rest of the world under a United Nations or a one world government, if you would. But the history of the Islam has been one for over 13 centuries of killing non-believers. It's just incredible that we don't wake up to the history that if they follow the Quran, they're commanded in over 100 verses to kill us if we don't convert. It's as simple as that. And if you follow what happened in Orlando, that's exactly what he did. He was born here, but he was converted because I guess he read the Quran or whatever, got radicalized. And so we better wake up what you're saying before we become Europe and we just write off the fact that a 5-year-old disabled girl was sexually assaulted and just let it go and no punishment. It's unbelievable. And it just makes people that much madder to stop this madness of bringing these people in that many of them, like you said, are going to try to kill us. Orlando's are going to happen all over the country in increasing frequency.
And I thank you for the call. It goes back to our comments we made when liberals are angry about gun control. They keep saying one dead child in Newtown, Connecticut is one too many. Or they say one dead gay person on the dance floor in Orlando is one too many. But when it comes to protecting your children from these newcomers, well, we've got to do it, don't you understand? Those are acceptable losses. I keep reiterating that because it shows you the depravity of their logic, or lack of logic, or the fact that they don't have a solid moral foundation, the hypocrisy of what they're talking about. 828, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You're on the air. You're up next.
Morning, Bill. On this, back to this refugee deal with the little girl, someone brought up a good point with Nate. They said, could you imagine if this had been 3 local boys, same ages, and this had been a 5-year-old disabled Syrian refugee or any refugee girl? If the case would remain closed and everyone would just be as hush hush and as have the same attitude, and I seriously doubt it. I bet it would be a pretty big story.
All the women in comfortable shoes in this community would be out there screaming and yelling that we need to keep the bigots in control, and this is what was going to happen. And they keep telling us that our rhetoric is going to cause all of these terrible crimes, none of which have happened. On the other hand, the terrible crimes are coming from the other direction. You tell me. Thank you for the call. Just quickly, on a note, tomorrow morning, Dr. Jonathan Tripp is scheduled to be in studio with us. Dr. Tripp, of course, or one of his associates, joins us every Wednesday between 8:30 and 9 o'clock for Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. The doctor and some members of his family are going on a mission trip to Nicaragua, and they'll be leaving sometime this summer. They're also looking to take some toiletries along to parts of the jungle where people have no access to anything like that. And he is asking that you contribute, if you can, to the effort as part of the mission effort. And you can do that by dropping off toiletries at his office, which is located on Fillmore Street on the north end of the city, directly across from the main post office here in Twin Falls. He'd also like to remind you, life's too short not to feel good. Feel free to give him a telephone call when he's in the studio with us tomorrow.